Hello everybody and welcome to the Robert H. Wilde True Crime Show. If you can hear me and if everything is working, let me know, because hello Rico, I have reset everything after our spooky stream. Tonight there will be some horror, but factual horror, rather than last week. I hope you're all having a good time. First, I'd like to thank Foxy for her renewed sub, 2 months from Foxy. Thank you very much. That gets you some emotes. I was saying that like I'm a professional streamer. Yeah, sub and get emotes. I think that's what you're supposed to say. So what have we got for you tonight? I'm doing a bit of a sandwich tonight. We're going to do a lighter one, then we're going to do two quite heavy ones, and then at the end we're going to do a new thing. We're going to do a breaking news. So currently everything I go through has sort of reached either an end or a prolonged period of unsolved, and there's quite a lot known, established. And what we're going to do at the end is we're going to go through a couple of stories that have been in the news this week. This means they are not at the end, and there's what's established is a bit riskier, so they're slightly less guaranteed factual. So we shall see how we get on with those. I'm hoping they're a bit of a lighter palate cleanser after the middle two, and then we will raid out to something wildlife themed, which I have found for us. Hopefully it's still light weather. I just checked, it's light, so we'll be going from British evening, British night time to somewhere in America where it's still lovely. So that's good. The first thing we were going to do, a couple of weeks ago, Ditch requested a theme, a topic that I had to do a story on. So I've got one for that. But if he's not here, we might save it. Give it a bit longer. As I tell you what we've got tonight. So we've got... in fact, I'm not going to tell you what we've got tonight. I'm going to save it as a surprise, because I've sort of in my head. I've got a way of introducing the second story that surprises you with what it is. So we shall see. Oh, Sydney says he loves Pink Floyd. So do many of us. We regularly hear Steve play a bit of Floyd. He's very good at that. Alright, we'll tell you what, Ditch isn't in, so we will save the requested mystery story until he is, and we will start with a real serious bit of true crime. Now, we're going to be discussing the case of Ronald Dominique. Ronald Dominique is often called the Bayou Strangler. Now, for a while, there was a very strange dichotomy. Dominique killed 23 males in basically a 10-year period, which would make him quite a prolific serial killer for America, but he was really not known outside Louisiana. However, he's been picked up by many a true crime streamer, documentarian, so he's getting much more better known. And obviously I'm just doing it as well. But I think it really helps to underline a few things about how these crimes often go unnoticed. So I think it's a bit of an interesting sort of teaching one as well. Okay, so between 1997 to 2006, Ronald Dominique murdered at least 23 males in Louisiana. I say at least, he confessed to 23, all those 23 are generally believed, but there could be more because there were some gaps. His crimes were so great that the FBI said it was the most significant serial killing in America in the 90s and noughties. But again, it's only until recently he's had any sort of broader awareness outside Louisiana. So, Ronald Dominique was born on the 9th of January 1964 in Thibodaux, Louisiana. His parents and he and his 5 older siblings lived in a trailer park on a low income. He attended the local high school and sung in the choir, but was bullied for his weight, his dark mood, his social awkwardness, and near the end, after being spotted in a gay bar, he was bullied for being gay, although he claimed he was straight. He didn't drink or use drugs, another reason why many students excluded him. However, he volunteered, doing gardening or shopping for people. He went to Nicholls State University to study computing, but dropped out. That meant he was unable to find anything other than low-paid jobs, and those he had, he struggled to keep. Between the jobs and support from his family, he would live with them, and at one point, and for much of this story, lived with his sister. However, he had obviously realised who he was because he spent an increasing amount of time in gay bars, being famous for dressing as Patti LaBelle. Although I should point out, the descriptions I've seen, he was very bad at dressing as Patti LaBelle. However, he was considered an outsider by the gay community, who were a bit suspicious of him, and it turns out they were right. He never established any long-term relationships, and after winning a moped in a McDonald's competition, he was known as Miss Moped, but that was not taken well, I believe, by the recipient. He had a heart condition, he was overweight, and he often had to use a cane. Now you may be wondering how I've just described a soft, gentle man with a heart condition who really couldn't do anything strenuous, how he killed 23 people. We'll get to that. And I should point out, he didn't shoot them. He strangled them. So there was a very elaborate MO coming up. So he had some related lesser crimes. His turn to crime started in 1985 when he was charged with sexually harassing someone over the phone, which I think was quite a relatively new thing in 1985. He was only fined $75. He was arrested and fined for drunk driving. The major problem, however, is in 1996, a half-dressed young man banged on the door of Dominique's neighbours, saying Dominique had just raped him and was trying to kill him. So the police arrested Dominique, and a crime was outlined. The man had been lured by Dominique into the trailer. There had been a fight because Dominique had wanted to tie the man up, and the man fled through an open window. He was charged. This was an opportunity to stop Ronald Dominique. Unfortunately, the victim vanished. Now, we don't know whether the victim felt so completely mistreated by the justice system he had nothing to do with it and left, or, as I'm sure many of you were thinking, he vanished. So, I don't know. But whatever happened, with no victim, the prosecution collapsed and the case was dropped. This case not only was an opportunity to stop Dominique, it also led Dominique to believe that he should never leave anybody alive again, and actively caused him to start murdering people instead of just being pretty awful anyway. So the killing spree began shortly after the case ended. His first known victim was David Mitchell. Dominique picked him up as Mitchell was hitchhiking home from his grandmother's, murdered him and dumped him in a ditch near a woodland. The body was found 2 days later. There were no traces of drugs or alcohol in the body. No real signs of physical harm. although his trousers were around his ankles, and water from the ditch was in Mitchell's lungs. Police ruled this an accidental drowning. Also, the first the family knew of his death was when they had heard that a TV news report was reporting that a black man's body had been found, and terrified they turned it on because they knew he was missing and they saw his face. The police only arrived after. The family struggled to cope. Aunt Rita Uber told the Herald Guide, "My sister has never made peace with his death. Every year she buys him Christmas, birthday and Easter presents. There are pictures in every room of the house." So Mitchell fits some of the profile that Dominique would target. And this is the profile. He would pick up men between 16 and 46, usually African American, often homeless, either driving past and offering lifts or hanging around them in cheap motels and gay bars, offering them drugs, booze and sex. He preferred to hunt between 10 and 2 and would offer $200, $300 cash and drugs, which was, if you're homeless and somebody wants to give you a large sum of money, then it's quite a tempting offer. Hello, Leslie. Once they were back at his trailer, and this is the crucial thing, once they were back at his trailer, he would persuade them to let him tie them up in a form of bondage. If they would not let him tie them up, he let them go because he could not tie them up himself. And the fact he let them go is what is going to get him caught eventually. However, once they had agreed to be tied up, they were raped and strangled, and their bodies were dumped in remote, dark areas. He was quiet, he felt an outsider. When he had a bound victim, he had the power. But there's an additional twist. Not all his victims were gay. Dominique invented a fictional woman. Sometimes this was a wife, sometimes this was a friend. And he would lure the men back because they wanted to sleep with her. He would show them a photograph, and it's believed this photograph was simply taken out of the frame that it came in from a shop. He would say, I've got somebody there, they're very shy, they're very scared, they will pay you for sex, but you have to be tied up so she knows you can't hurt her. Of course, once they were tied up, they would find out that woman was entirely fictional. The second victim was Gary Pierre, who was 20. He'd been in trouble for drug trafficking. He vanished in December 1997. When his body was found, Michael Barden, host of the TV show Autopsy and chief forensic pathologist of the New York State Police, was flown in to examine it, and he concluded Pierre had been bound and strangled. Dominique's third victim was 38-year-old Larry Ronson. He was homeless. Now, I've dug up an article from L'Observatoire from February 6th, 1999. And it said that until 1999, the deaths of Pierre and Ronson had not been given any designation. And it was only then that they were designated as homicides. However, the report explicitly states the two murders are apparently unrelated. And the fact that the quote is they were heavily involved with drugs seems to be a reason to almost look past them. Because at the beginning, police did not realise this was a connected event. Dominique was killing people, nobody really knew, nobody had any idea it was the same person. And there is perhaps a hint in that news report that maybe they're not looking quite as much as they are, but we're going to come later on to why Dominique's MO was such a problem for detectives. To be fair to detectives, he was almost perfect in going undetected, and I'm going to talk to you about why in a little bit. But again, this is a case that I think illustrates a lot of interesting things rather than just being a series of murders. In October 1998, Dominique killed Oliver LeBancs. He was 27. Dominique claimed, once he'd been caught, that the Banks offered to prostitute himself to Dominique so he could feed a drug habit. The Banks had a girlfriend and 5 children between former partners. He was working in the kitchen. Fortunately, he could not cook drugs and was fired. His boss, Mark Paulson, said that if he didn't get help, he'd be dead in 3 months, and sadly he was. Interestingly, though, the Banks' body was recovered. The police managed to get DNA from a semen sample from it. This DNA would later be used to prove Dominique was the killer. Later that month, Dominique lured a 16-year-old, Joseph Brown, back for crack cocaine, and the same route was worked on Bruce Williams, who was 18. In May 1999, 21-year-old Manuel Reed offered to sell Dominique drugs the other way around. Dominique agreed, took him to the truck, and he was killed and put in a rubbish bin. Again, police were able to recover DNA, but they had no idea who to test for the match. After another month, Dominique picked up Angel Major, killed him, and on finding the rubbish bin full, just left his body on the street. Police had few leads on these killings, but realised Major had known Brown and Pierre. In the August of that year, Dominique picked up 34-year-old Mitchell Johnson by offering him drugs in exchange for sex, but drove him to a forest this time and killed him there. So police repeatedly faced problems as these bodies appeared. In a murder, police frequently find success in reconstructing the previous 24 hours and looking at the people that the victim knew. Unfortunately, Dominique was firstly leaving very limited forensic evidence, but it was also very difficult to find any connection between the victim and killer, because they didn't know each other until the moment of contact, which doomed them. There was little way to work back or find connections. And I've been telling you about a lot of murders. I'll be telling you about a lot more murders. Dominique was never a police suspect in any of these killings until... Hello, Karen. Good to see you. He was never a suspect until the thing at the end that we will find that caught him. He was completely under the radar. The fact that he deliberately targeted homeless people on the fringes of criminal activity and connected to drugs muddied the potential trails. The spree continued into the new millennium when he picked up and killed Michael Vincent, 23. In 2002, Dominique was arrested for assaulting a woman at a Mardi Gras, but the case was dropped. Dominique claimed he got into an argument with the woman after she hit a pushchair with her car, and he then punched her. A reconciliation was agreed. There was a gap in the murders, possibly because we do not know of the other murders. But then he lured Kenneth Randolph Jr., who'd been prosecuted 3 times for child abuse and generally doesn't get much sympathy in these write-ups, to his trailer, claiming there was a girl there, and he was killed and dumped. A few days later, Anoka Jones was again raped, killed and dumped. So welcoming Karen. Karen has a fantastic show on Twitch, several times a week, singing, and I've got to get this right, the 40s, the 60s, the 70s. Is that right, Karen? I think so. And also, how can I forget the Halloween and various pagan festival streams? Oh, and there was a brilliant Eurovision one. Admittedly, if you want to watch the Eurovision one, you've either got to do the VOD or wait a year, so we shall see. I'm sure there's another pagan festival coming up though soon, and they seem to pack them in. No, right. So, in October 2004, we're slowly getting through these. I feel it's important to... Another one coming soon, Litha, excellent. I think it's important when you to honour these these people were mentioning their names, not just going, oh, there's 23. We know some details. I'm not going through all these names just for sort of lurid entertainment. I think it's important that in a case you sort of recognise that these were people, and they do deserve to be looked at as part of what's going on. Larry Matthews, 46, was persuaded to come to the house for drugs. Matthews actually overdosed before he was killed. However, as he was homeless, Matthews was not reported missing. Again, we have the issue that Dominique was targeting people in difficult circumstances that were hard to investigate. As Sheriff Jerry LaPentia told the Tri-Parish Times, here you've got a guy that don't look like a serial killer, and his victims, when they leave home, they might leave for days or weeks and not contact anybody, because several of them were looking for money to survive. And by survive, I mean they had drug problems. Several had drug problems with the lifestyle that led to their demise. Shortly after, Dominique killed his first white male, Michael Bennett, in 21. In February 2005, again another jump, he killed Leon Lorette, 22. He was an alcoholic who would go missing for days and then returned to his mother, and his body was dumped at an airbase. Oddly, the police investigation into Jones had named Lorette as a prime suspect before clearing Lorette. Lorette was the last person to see Jones alive, and Jones was known to be carrying money. Again, Dominique was completely flying under the radar. At this point, nobody knew he existed. One victim had been blamed for killing another victim. August Watkins was killed next. And it was after Watkins' body was found that police finally came out to the public with their suspicions. Humor Police Chief Pat Bedrow told press, I think there is enough evidence to be concerned there is a serial killer in our area. They reached out to the FBI. The task force was under the lead of Louisiana's Attorney General's office and had 6 main members, bolstered every time a body turned up. Dawn Forrett told the Homer Times, if we'd had a fresh body, you'd have 50 people in the room, bosses from all over. But once the hot leads ran down, it was pretty much the core group. They were under great pressure. There were only a few of them. She said we needed to get them done as soon as possible. There was only 4 or 5 was able to do it. It was overwhelming, but we got through it. Now we come to Bill Null. He is a specialist. I think he's a specialist in sex crimes for the Louisiana Department of Probation and Parole. He was on the team, and he spoke about the problems they faced with this unknown serial killer. When this guy killed somebody, he didn't know where he was going to dump the body. He would just put the body in the back of a truck and ride around and find somewhere. All your evidence was destroyed by nature or water or whatever. He was actually very good at what he was doing, dumping the bodies, because he was destroying a lot of the evidence, but he didn't destroy it all, and that led to his identity. Meanwhile, Dominique, so that quote's from the Homer Times, 2010. Meanwhile, Dominique had joined the Lions Club and was a hit at bingo nights. He was completely unsuspected. I'm glad you're loving the spooky, creepy stories, Karen. That's what we've really got tonight. This is a bit of a heavy one. Then we've got a bizarre but heavy one. And then we've got our new feature, which is from this week's news, in which we cover some breaking news that we don't really know everything that's going on, but we try and cover what's in the press. Don't worry, this list of people who are being killed will end shortly, and we'll get to some arrests. There's just a lot of them. Soon. Hello, Polly. Hello, Polly. Do come up if you want to sit on your. Polly's here, everybody. But, we'll see. She's been very brave. She's now halfway through her vet's visits. So we're nearly there. I probably shouldn't use the V word, should I? In case you get a bit stressed. Thank you, Sydney. That's really great of you. Thank you. So soon after, Dominique killed Kurt Cunningham, 23, and then Alonzo Hogan, 28, and Wayne Smith, 17. The latter 2 were lured by promise of sex with Dominique's invented female acquaintance. Wayne Smith was not homeless or generally in trouble. He just made one very bad decision. Chris DeVille, 40, was killed next while hitchhiking and then Nicholas Pellegrin, an offshore worker, was killed. Because Pellegrin was in trouble with drug dealers who he owed money to, he was only connected to the case after Dominique's arrest. Again, Dominique picked a victim where he would fly under the radar. Pellegrin's mother initially told the press it was not a serial killer, that it was definitely drugs. They were all on drugs. They did drugs together. And she accused the police of not acting to arrest the drug dealers. The final known victim was Christopher Sutterfield. They were sort of loosely dating, and he was killed and dumped at a boat launch. Right, now, we've got through the heavy stuff. Now we're going to get to some arrests. Don't worry. Are you coming up? Are you sitting there? Okay, so Dominique was arrested, thank God, on December 1st, 2006. Now, how was he arrested? The police had no idea. Right, they had no idea who he was. He wasn't a suspect, but he got arrested. How? Do you remember at the very beginning I said he wasn't physically capable of tying these men up himself? He had to persuade them to be tied up. And if they weren't tied up, if they refused, he had to let them go. That's how they got him. In November 2006, a man who had had a lucky escape came forward. He had told his family what had happened to him. Family called the police, and Bill Null, who we met earlier, went to talk to him. He told him he'd been driven past several times on a road by a vehicle which pulled up, and it was Dominique. He was invited to his trailer for drugs and group sex with a woman, but when he got there, the woman was absent because she didn't exist. Dominique said she wanted bondage, and he would tie him up, at which point she'd come out. Despite being high on crack, Wallace had the good sense to say no, and he left. So he went to Bill Null, and the police sort of thought, hello Steve, this could be our guy. So they spoke to Wallace. Wallace, of course, didn't know who the man was, but he did know where he was. So they drove Wallace round until he found Dominique's home. They then got a picture of Dominique, and he was identified. So police brought Dominique in to question him, and while there, he freely allowed them to take a blood sample. They had the DNA, which they could now finally match with multiple victims. While waiting for the DNA results, Dominique was under 24-hour surveillance. However, he decided to leave his sister's house and take up residence at the bunkhouse homeless shelter in Houma, because he knew he was going to be caught and didn't want to disturb his sister. Bit of a problem, though. The only people in the bunkhouse who knew he was a suspected serial killer who killed people who lived in places like the bunkhouse were the owners, and they had a nervous few days, but the police were constantly monitoring. Anyway, once arrested, it took only 3 hours for him to confess to 23 murders. The police had no idea there were 23 murders. But he gave details only the killer could have known. He refused initially to say he was guilty, preferring to say they'd all agreed to take part. But it's a bit hard to argue that they'd agreed to all be strangled. So he was talked into a plea bargain. If he pled guilty to 8 murders, he wouldn't be executed. So on September 24th, 2008, he was convicted and given 8 life sentences without parole. He would later plead guilty to others. However, the families generally agreed with this deal. They preferred to have the court case finished, find closure, because if he'd been convicted of the death penalty, there would have been 12, 20 years of appeals dragging on. They wanted it done. Also, it was known that Dominique was terrified of going to prison, and they thought, well, that'll be fun for him then, won't it? Let's leave him there forever. So they did. At first, some families didn't believe he could have done it. Some said Jones and DeVille had families and children and wouldn't be lured by the thought of sex with others. Some said there must be an accomplice who had overpowered and kidnapped these men. But I believe they all came to understand what had happened. At the sentencing, the families of the deceased got to speak. Chris DeVille's sister said, "My brother wasn't just a person on crack. I know he had problems. Everybody has problems. He was on drugs, he did things he shouldn't do, but he still had respect for my mother. We loved and cared about him. When we found him, he was bones. We had to bury bones. He remains inside. It was felt he wasn't going to be safe in general population, and spent 23 hours a day in a single inmate cell with an hour for recreation and a shower." Oh, you're sitting in a new place. Sorry, Paul. You're sitting in a new place, which is on all the cabling. If this stream vanishes, it's technically a technical error. It's actually a kitty error. My fairy assistant has disassembled the equipment, and we will be back pending the princess's mood and letting me put it together. Is it warm? It's warm, isn't it? She sat on. It's warm, so she sat on the warm thing. I'm gonna have to put a little heater under the cat cam. Cat cam's in the wrong place. Right. So that was hello, Rico. So that was a particularly sort of grim story, but it just goes to show how I thought it was illustrative of how something like a serial killer can operate and get away with things, how you can fly under the radar, the problems police face. A lot of crimes are solved because there are traceable connections. When there are no traceable connections, when you're murdered by somebody you met 30 minutes ago, it's a lot harder, especially in an area where they lived, where there's no, it's not full of CCTV. I imagine it must be very difficult to abduct someone in the city of London, given that you can't move without face recognition. But if you're in the middle of the Bayou, where there isn't much, it's certainly a problem. We'll take a little bit of a pause before we get into our next story. I promise you our next story. I do apologise. It's a bit tasteless. But it is real and it is different. I want to keep doing different things. Everybody in the next story is already dead before the crime. Yeah, sorry. So I do want to pause and discuss a few things. We are here on the Tuesday night of the True Crime Show. My plan is for a couple of months is we will pause the Tuesday shows and we will only do one a week Thursday show, True Crime shows. Now you may be wondering why. This is not because I don't want to do the shows. It's because a couple of times. So firstly, I write new material for each of these shows, and I've mentioned a couple of times on stream that I am writing a book on Jack the Ripper, my signature book on Jack the Ripper. Given things going on in life and everything, I have an opportunity to really focus on that for a few weeks, and I want to do that because when that book is finished to my satisfaction, we can have an absolute cracking series of streams on Jack the Ripper. I think it could be a really great thing to leave on YouTube. So the plan is Tuesday we'll pause for a while, and when Tuesday returns we will do Jack the Ripper Tuesdays for quite a while till I run out of material, and then we will also do Thursday other things. I think it would be terrible to sort of spend 3 solid weeks of shows on Jack the Ripper because everyone will be like, if you don't want to talk about Jack the Ripper, you're going to miss out. So we're going to do Tuesday Jack the Ripper, Thursday True Crime Show. But again, I've got to write this to my satisfaction. I could probably do it. I could do it now, but I'm not. I wouldn't be happy. So that's the plan. If everyone's alright with that. Hello, C1 Rockstar. Good to see you. Right, I'm going to do a story now. Again, send your complaints to Polly at angrycat.gmail. So, a lot of the stories I've told you about involve dead bodies, and the story of Karen Greenlee is no different. There are a lot of dead bodies in Karen Greenlee's story. The thing is, Karen didn't kill them. She became infamous for doing something else with them. So Karen Greenlee was born in 1956, lived her early years in Sonoma County, California. Sadly, she was abused at age 8 and 14. After this, the family moved to Colfax, also in California, and Greenlee graduated high school. She married, separated, and began a job as an apprentice embalmer for the Memorial Law Mortuary in Sacramento. So, on December 17th, 1979, Karen Greenlee had one of the all-time bad days at work. Peak bad day at work. You seem really chilled and happy there, possibly because you were on a space heater, i.e. my PC. Please don't get fluff it in the CPU. That's impossible, isn't it? Because you are just fluff. Right, so Karen Greenlee was driving a 1975 Cadillac hearse to a burial, and within it was the corpse of a man who'd recently been died and in the care of the mortuary. However, as the family of the deceased came into view, Karen experienced a moment of pure mania and drove off with the hearse, turning it round and speeding away. For a few days, the vehicle, Karen and the body were officially missing, until she was found near Allegheny. She had taken an overdose of Tylenol and codeine to kill herself, but a stomach pump would ensure she survived. Unfortunately for Greenlee, during the suicide attempt, she had written a 4.5-page deathbed confession of what she'd been doing, which was found. What had she been doing? Well, to put it crudely, she'd been doing the corpses. She suffered an addiction to necrophilia and had abused between 20 and 40 young men's bodies, in the letter. She was deeply conflicted, and the note read, "Why do I do this? Why? Why? Fear of love, relationships. No romance ever hurt like this. It's the pits. I'm a morgue rat. This is my rat hole, perhaps my grave." Now, you're probably thinking, Karen got into a lot of trouble for this. It was at this point that California police discovered no one, the founding fathers, the pioneers, nobody had actually made necrophilia illegal, so she couldn't be charged. All they could do was charge her with stealing the vehicle and interfering with her funeral. So she pled guilty and got 11 days in... Sorry, I'm jiggling... You've just got to know the cutest thing. I was jiggling my leg, and Polly has just put her paw on it to stop me. She got 11 days in prison, a £250 fine, and a period of probation for stealing the vehicle. Needless to say, they changed the law, obviously, at this point. However, Greenlee and the mortuary were sued by $1 million for the mother of victim John McCure. Unfortunately, Greenlee had good lawyers, and they absolutely rubbished the mother in court, saying she was an alcoholic, and they settled for $117,000. However, although Greenlee had been spread all over the press with lurid headlines, It turned out she'd got a job at a different funeral parlour in a different city. She was soon fired from that, not because they'd found out what she had done, but because she'd been doing it again, obviously. So that might have been that. In the pre-internet age, she could have moved, blended back into life, maybe moved from funeral home to funeral home. But in 1987, Karen Greenlee managed to get even more infamous. So back in the 80s, there was no internet. There was this thing called the transgressive community. It was fragmented, it was underground, it was fanzines, small presses. Into this vacuum came Feral House, who published a collection of essays called Apocalypse Culture. It managed to gain more mainstream traction and accessibility. For transgressive culture, than most volumes. I believe that there was an art exhibition at a very high-ranking London gallery that had it for sale. This is how much it crossed over. In it, there was an interview between Jim Morton and Karen Greenlee with a title that she would later come to regret. It was called The Unrepentant Necrophile. Karen Greenlee became a celebrity. I was going to say, sort of worldwide celebrity in the same way that, indie bands, odd writers, that sort of alternative level of fame. She got it. And in order to write this article, I found a copy. So the essay opens with a quote from Karen about how she found peace. Not giving up necrophilia, but finding peace with it. She said she was suicidal, and her confession, because she felt society was making her feel like she was wrong. Now, however, she's sure she's right. Once again, the lawmakers in California are regretting ever not thinking harder about what they made illegal. Interviewer Jim Morton begins by asking what support she's had. She said she hates reporters after being lambasted by the press. I kind of understand where they were coming from. Her family and relationships suffered greatly. One brother ignored her for a while, and she said another brother asked her lots of lurid questions. Yeah, I think we need to check his hard drives as well. She recounts how an old boyfriend found out, beat her and dumped her, and she's surprised at how many people secretly had worked it out before it went public. Once again, if you secretly work out somebody you know is abusing bodies in a mortuary, for God's sake, tell somebody. Right? Don't just go, oh, they're a bit weird. There's like a bar, and that's over the bar. She says she gets lots of offers from men who thinks a night with them will cure her of the dead. I feel like I could riff on that for 5 minutes, but then we'll get taken off YouTube for content warnings, so we'll keep you moving. You may or may not want to know what the attraction is. Well, she explained the attraction, and I'm going to tell you. Sorry. She is able to explain exactly what it is that attracts her to the dead. There's the physical element of touching, skin on skin, sexual contact, but also the atmosphere of the morgue, the psychological effect of the stillness of death, the smell of an embalmed corpse. Greenlee goes on to say she hasn't broken into any funeral homes recently, implying that she has been before then. Even though she could, because many of her preferred type of 20-something man are dying of AIDS, and she wouldn't want to catch anything nasty off the dead. Anyway, equally disturbingly, Greenlee reveals to Morton that part of the attraction was that working as a mortuary attendant meant that she was able to go to the funerals of her lovers and go through her own mourning alongside the family and friends of the victim. Asked when she became aware of her desires, she replied she'd been attracted to death all her life, giving pets funeral services. Now, I think that's fine. I don't want anybody that gives their pet any children that give their pet a funeral service to be tarred with that brush, Karen. I think we'll just, that's unfair, Karen. However, she does mention that a religious group came to the mortuary and said they didn't want the body embalming because they were going to use it in a ceremony to raise the dead. Yes, if you were wondering, Karen met people even weirder than Karen. Now we get to the really scary bit. Greenleaf had a fair bit to say about how often this goes on. She says, there's a camaraderie in the profession because everyone thinks they're on. She takes issues with the funeral directors who testified at her trial that necrophilia among staff is absolutely unheard of. Greenlee says it's actually more common than you'd think. It's just that no funeral home will ever report it to the police because their business will be ruined, so they just fire people. Greenleaf narrates the closest she came to getting caught as an example. Hello, Cootie. Hello, Cootie. I should point out that's the cat. I'm not talking to Karen there. I really need to think about when I slip into cat mode. Possibly not when I'm talking about horrible things, because it looks a bit jarring. Anyway, she was living in a halfway house after a suicide attempt and kept breaking into a mausoleum when she realised she could break into the neighbouring funeral home, which she did. She frequently broke in and abused the corpses until one night she was in the middle of the act. When people came in, she was spotted and fled. However, the police were never called. There was never any press reports. It was all covered up. Leslie asks, why would their business be ruined if it were all okay? Well, that's the thing. It isn't okay. No funeral parlour wants to have to go, yeah, one of our staff was having sex with the bodies. Sorry. That would ruin. That's it. No one's going back there. I think that's their Gerald Ratner moment. Bit of a niche reference there for our global listeners. Sorry. Yeah, exactly. You're right. Her argument that, well, this is fine, it's perfectly normal, doesn't stand up to the fact that anybody knowing she did it has to cover it up. It's clearly not. I mean, she's clearly not right. I mean, I don't expect to ever get any. I mean, no offence, Karen, but I don't expect you to ever say anything that makes sense, given the circumstances. Right? But I do find it interesting to listen to her words. Yes, C1 Rockstar absolutely gets the Gerald Ratner reference. Karen has done some research, and she says only 10% of known necrophiles are women. Which, let's be honest, doesn't surprise anybody, does it? Doesn't surprise anybody that it's mostly blokes doing this. Anyway, at the end of the interview, Morton and Greenleaf discuss her treatment. She says that's her nature. She might as well enjoy it. She had a really nice social worker. She was very cool and non-judgmental. The more I talk to these people, the more I realise necrophilia makes sense for me. Not sure what sort of social worker she had. For a while, Greenlee rode the wave of speaking engagements and interviews. She did an interview which horrified the reporters so much it was never released. Hello there, sorry about that. Quick hydrate. However, Greenlee later said she regretted the interview and everything that came with it, and changed her name and moved to a new city. So no one knows where she is now. And that is Karen Greenlee. You know, bit of a different one. What can I say? So in a minute we'll go into our news segment. So the idea is we're going to do two things together. We're going to have a what's going on in the news, and then we'll have, if there is it, obviously if there is any news, this segment is entirely dependent on what happens that week. And then we'll try and put in a few light-hearted enders. Obviously this is a true crime show, so the word light-hearted is extremely open, stretched, I would say. Anyway, but we shall do that. So I do want to do I won't do this every week, but I'll do a bit of one. So everything I tell you normally has been researched. We sort of have a good idea of what's going on. Breaking news, you're really at the mercy of changing situations. So it's vastly more likely that I'm going to say something that might not actually be accurate, because we're really working our way through, fluid situations. So we shall see how we go. So I have 3 today, and we'll do them in reverse order and build up to the comedy. So what day is it? Yesterday, the 3rd of June, French intelligence officials were called to the Eiffel Tower at 7 a.m. GMT. It says 7 GMT. I was told today that you can't do that because we're not telling. I don't know. So we'll just go with, at 9 a.m. French time, a van pulled up outside the Eiffel Tower. A group of men unloaded 5 coffins. On each coffin was a French flag, and on each flag someone had written "French soldiers of Ukraine." They then drove off. Somebody then rang the security services. What was going on here? Even though this has only been going for 24 hours, the security services managed to get the driver very quickly. Number plates and all that. He had been paid €40 by the 2 other people involved to drive the coffins. He'd come from Bulgaria. They then caught the other 2 at Bercy coach station in central Paris. They were trying to get to Berlin. They had been told they had been paid €400 to get and dump the coffins. It is believed, again believed, this is a fluid situation and we are relying on their instant take, it's believed that this is a Russian attempt to change French public opinion about sending troops into the Ukraine war, and they decided, well, manipulating the internet with an entire city full of trolls isn't enough. Let's try something a bit more like a student stunt. So they paid somebody to dump a load of coffins by the Eiffel Tower. Sadly, I could not find a copyright-free image of this to use. I may have put it in. I think the spooky stream people love the ghost photos most of all, so I have to keep an eye out for copyright-free stuff. Again, we're very careful about using material that I am allowed to use, that I'm not nipping on copyright. I'm certainly sticking images up and and stuff. Gotta be careful. So that was a bit of a mystery. The next one. Right. I'm going to tell you a story and then I want you to guess something. So, a serial slingshot shooter who has antagonized residents of his California neighborhood has been arrested. For years, somebody unknown has been firing ball bearings at homes, breaking windows, causing all sorts of damage. Car windows, home windows, deliberately going as close to people as possible. However, in a recent spate of attacks, they were able to... that's a good idea. See, that's a good idea. In a recent spate of attacks, they were able to triangulate and go into somebody's home where they discovered slingshots and balls. So, finally, the California slingshot shooter has been caught and arrested. Right then, guess how old he was? Who's been going around firing ball bearings into windows? How old do you think? How old do you think he was? 68, 13. He was 81. And he'd been doing it for 10 years. I mean, I guess when you retire, you've got to have a hobby. Got to admire his... Leslie says, got to admire his eyesight at 81. Yes, yes you do. Alright, we have another little story for you. Adam Spencer, 40, was arrested by officers in Sutton-in-Ashfield, Nottinghamshire. He admitted a series of offences and was charged with 2 counts of burglary and 3 counts of theft. He was given a 6-month prison sentence, suspended for a year. So, the theft started on April 11th in a local Tesco before moving to an Asda. He also broke through the back door of an Iceland, stealing meat products. He then went back later and stole even more products. He went back 2 weeks and then stole more. The reason I'm telling you this is because after he was arrested, police asked him why during one raid he had stolen 17 packets of Pringles. And I don't want to encourage any form of burglary, shoplifting or crime, but I do find it very funny that when being told, this is true, this is legally written down, when being asked, why did you steal all those Pringles, he replied, once you pop, you can't stop. I do find I loved the slogan, once you pop you can't stop. The thing is, now they're trying to be really healthy and say, but do buy Pringles, but don't eat them all at once. So they've got resealable Pringles, so they can't use once you pop you can't stop anymore, unless you're stealing a load of them. In which case. Yeah. Right, I think we will leave the animal-themed story that Ditch wanted until he is able to attend. I know he can see the VOD, but I think we'll leave that for now. Purely because nobody else is going to have the slightest bit of interest in it. You heard the Pringle theft story, Sydney. Yeah. I'm glad it probably made international world news. It's just so funny and on point. Now, we've been streaming for an hour and 6 minutes. And I have completely misjudged the amount of material. I have now run out of material. So let me have a think. Hello, King Cobra. Good to see you. Yeah, Thelonious Monk's got a very good point. These days, 5 tubes equates to 1 Pringles tube. It's like that with chocolate. Like a Mars bar is not a Mars bar. It's like half. You have to buy 2 Mars bars now to actually get what used to be a Mars bar, which means Mars get more money and pretend to be healthier, and we get screwed. They've had to actually invent the duo. Here's a duo. It's 2 smaller bars put together, so you've got one for now and one for later. No, I'm going to have them now because that's an actual chocolate bar, like with crisps and everything. You see, it's just really small. Yeah. The problem is, I said I've done those things where we're going to end on a high note. I'm going to end happy, and I'm not really sure I've got any other material. That dog's just going to ruin the mood. Let me have a look at what I've got on file. Hello. We may just call it here because I feel like we've got the ending I want. I knew I was going into this doing one really grim case and one really bizarre case. And I wanted to lift the mood at the end. Because I do feel, I don't want to send people away like, the world's awful. Which I think, well, sometimes people do a lot of true crime. And then they end up going, this is terrible. I don't want that. So I think we're in a really good vibe. So we're not going to do anything else. Because it's... I know, yeah, so I've totally misjudged how much material we would do. And I've not spent 10 minutes talking to the cat. I've got to allow for the fact that sometimes Polly's not going to... Maybe Polly could do a cat... Where are you, Polly? Let me just put cat cam on and see if we can see her. No, we can't see her unless she's in that box. Actually, I'll tell you a story. Mars bars have been on sale for 92 years this year. Wow. I want somebody needs to get an original Mars bar and put it next to what we call a Mars bar today. Anyway, so over the weekend I decided to have a big tidy up, spring clean, if you will. I've been selling a lot of stuff on eBay, and when you do that, you need to store up cardboard boxes because you never know what you're going to need. So I had a big pile of cardboard boxes. Yep, thanks for giving King Cobra a shout out. Do go and check out their stream. In fact, before I get on to the cat story, let's give everyone a proper shout out. So let me bring up the it's probably easier if I bring up the who's in chat. So we have Cam Warbis, an excellent singer who streams on Twitch. We have Steve Ford, an excellent guitarist who streams on Twitch. We have Foxy Harley, a variety streamer, who this evening completed Little Nightmares 2. I don't want to spoil what happens in Little Nightmares 1 and Little Nightmares 2, but Little Nightmares 2 certainly lives up to the Nightmares part. I nearly talked about the endings there. Oh God, that'd be awful, wouldn't it, if I'm just sat there going, well, and then everyone writes in going, you've ruined it now. Please also go and have a look at Sydney, who does these marvellous streams where you can look from your dull British weather window into some lovely Michigan countryside. Also, I believe C1 Rockstar. Do you stream C1? King Cobra streams. C1 Rockstar might stream. I think I've got everyone. If I haven't got you, do let us know. Oh, King Cobra has got the statistics. In the 1980s, a standard Mars bar weighed 49 grams. This increased to 65 grams in the 90s and dropped to 51 grams in 2015. Well, there we have it. The 90s was peak Mars bar time. Good music, good Mars bars. Excellent, Stephen, excellent. So I was cleaning, so I thought, right, well, the e-bang's paused for a while, so we'll just get rid of all the boxes. So I'm tearing up all these boxes and putting them away, and I've got one box left. And it's a box for something. I think, well, I'll keep that in case it malfunctions, then I can post it back. And I put this box on my armchair. And when I went into the kitchen and did some pottering about, I then came out with a drink. I went to pick the box up with one hand, because it's a cardboard box. Went to pick it with one hand, couldn't pick it up because it had suddenly become hugely heavier. And for a moment, I didn't realise what had happened with the box. So I looked in the box, and what do you think I saw in the box? A sleeping Polly. She had got... we having to take her to the vet. She does not like her cat carrier. But if there's a cardboard box that's even smaller, oh, she'll jump in that. It's a shame I can't take her to the vet in a cardboard box. Obviously, that would be chaos, but yeah, I was complete. So I just had to leave. She looked up at me like, "You left this here. It's not yours now." So I thought, right, well, I'll just have to leave. So I just had to leave it until she got out. And that would normally be the end of the story. But when she did get out, I put it upstairs and put it where it's supposed to be for storage. Anyway. I was just laying in bed in the middle of the night, and I heard this sort of scrabbling sound, so I woke and looked up, and I could just see Polly trying to get into the box, and clearly she's misjudged this, and she just falls in, like, bang. Are you all right? That wasn't the most, like, you're supposed to be, you've got 10,000 years of hunting skills. You've just plummeted into a box. Yeah, Thlonis, they do love boxes, they do. I've yet to do the trick where you mark out a square on the ground in tape and they sit in it. I need to do that. Video that'd be good fun. But we're just waiting until she's had her vet visits. Yes, I am live on... Yes, I should mention. Yes, we are multi-streaming. The True Crime Show goes out on Twitch, but it also goes out on YouTube, and we're on both. Sion Rockstar, some advice on the matter. So leave the cat carrier open on the floor to allow them to walk in and out so they feel less threatened going to the vets. Excellent. Yes, I've accidentally been doing that. It is out, it is open, and she does walk past it. She does not... It's interesting. I thought she would run the moment she saw me with it. She doesn't, actually. She doesn't. She doesn't like being in it. She tries to get out of it, and she's not very happy. But she doesn't actually like it when I pick it up. So thanks, you not. That's very handy. And I know I'm heading the right route. Hello, Steve. Good to see you. Right then, everybody. Well, I think we'll call it there. I think we've had a good time. I think we've ended on a high note, which is often difficult to do with these things. Let me just check if the place I would like to raid, the smaller the better, mine squabble over who's having a turn. Yeah. In fact, a friend of mine sent me a photo because their cat had attempted to get in a box and got it absolutely jammed on their head, and when they came home it was just wandering about bumping into stuff, because although it was a kitten, it was a very small box and they did not match. So if there's any cats watching, be careful not to get your head jammed in. Yes, Roxy, yes, that's a good idea. We've been trying the Feliway spray, which you put in 15 minutes before, and that's supposed to help. Oh yes, so thank you, Cindy, for reminding me. Final note, we will be going to Thursday only for a couple of months while I finish work on what I hope will be the first signature series for this stream, which will be Jack the Ripper. And when that is finished, we will be doing Jack the Ripper Tuesdays for a while, going into that in detail, and then we'll be doing the normal true crime show on Thursdays, where we'll be doing literally anything that isn't Jack the Ripper. So Thelonious Monk's just like it's like called a cuddle paddle. One cat gets in the box, another cat thinks I'll get in a box and crushes the cat below them, and I presume a very cute fight results. Right, everybody. I'm supposed to be checking to if this is working. Yes, right. So this place we're going to. Also, Rockstar, excellent. What we're going to is basically a webcam overlooking a little fountain, and they have birds and they have squirrels and all sorts of things. There are currently squirrels eating nuts. So we will move with alacrity so you can see some squirrels. Alright everybody, I hope you've had a good time this evening. Please join me on Thursday for the next episode of the True Crime Show. I will definitely have enough material for that one. We cracked through it tonight. Thank you, and we will see what other light-hearted ending stories. I think the lighter, shorter ending stories is going well. So thank you everybody for your kind comments. Let's go and see some squirrels.